I was adopted at 10 days old, and my birth mum was only 16 when she had me, so she felt her only option was to adopt me out. So I was adopted into a very loving, caring family based in Rongataha in Rotorua. That family I was adopted into ended up having a couple more children, so I ended up with a younger brother and sister. As much as my adoptive parents did their best to make me feel part of the family, it just never sat well with me. I just always felt a disconnect. I always felt I was kind of like on the outside of that core family unit. And I don't think it's anything they did or said. I think it was more of a deep-rooted issue within me. I was starting to develop a bit of an anger issue. My frustration tended to come out more in violence. Around about the age of 15, 16, my adoptive parents separated and then later divorced. And that basically was the tipping point for me. Like, I was so confused about who I was and how I fit in, and that just kind of pushed me over the edge, and I started hanging around with the wrong crowd, doing a lot of drug dealing. Fighting was just a regular weekend occurrence. That ended up breaking relationships with my family, breaking relationships with my friends, so I became even more isolated and felt even more rejected. When you're dealing with rejection or you're dealing with isolation, you're attracted to other people that are going through the same thing, and I was involved in a relationship with a girl, and we both came into that relationship carrying a whole heap of baggage. It was really toxic, so violent outbursts, emotional manipulation, all those kind of things, and she had some children, and then she fell pregnant. One morning, I completely lost the plot with her, went gangbusters and beat her up real badly, and I was arrested that morning, not long afterwards. Then was remanded on bail back to my address in Hamilton, and kind of got back into my work routine, but still had this weight of all these charges that were now against me for the assaults. And my adopted mum rung, and she said there was an opportunity for a placement in a men's Christian rehabilitation home in Whakatane. The very day that I got to the men's rehabilitation home, the manager of it was part of a local church in Whakatane, and he was on the worship team, and he invited me to come and listen to the worship practice. And of course, that church was empty. It's quite a large church. It was empty bar the worship team. And they were on stage, and they were sort of going through, obviously, songs that they were going to perform for that coming Sunday. And I just sat there and listened, and then I just began to weep and weep and weep and weep, and just really felt the presence of God in that moment. Like, he just almost sat next to me. It wasn't that I was crying because I felt sorry for myself. It was just the overwhelming sense of that he was there with me, and that all of that pain from all of those years of isolation and rejection, all of a sudden there was like a light or a pathway out of that feeling. And that was really the turning point for me. I rededicated my life that night back to God. Despite, growing up in church, I'd never really experienced the true who God is, that loving, caring Father. And in that moment, I sensed who that was, and I changed my belief. I decided right there and then that that's who I wanted to follow. Thing was, I still had a court case hanging over me, thinking in my head, I'm in a rehabilitation home, and I know God loves me now, and he's gonna save me from prison. And stood before the judge, and he handed me a sentence of 27 months in prison. So I was quite shocked by that. And I remember sitting in the cell and again just weeping and weeping again by myself in this dark underground cell, and again felt the real strong presence of God. And this time I heard like an audible voice of him saying, "I've got you, son, I'm with you." It was like the word that I needed, because so many times in my life I'd been rejected or felt isolated, and that was because people let you down, and even not intentionally, but I just knew in that moment that God wasn't the type of person to let you down. What I didn't know at the time, my ex-partner had been involved with victim support because of the assault, and the lady that had come to talk with her was a Christian, and she had invited her to church, and she had given her heart to the Lord. Came out of prison. I got out early on parole, and I was living at the men's rehabilitation home, and the manager came out to me and he says, "Oh, your ex-partner's on the phone." She had rung completely out of the blue, asked me if I wanted to see my son. It was arranged with some supervision that she would come to visit and bring my son. It was such a magic moment. I remember Then pulling up on the driveway, and I walked to the car, obviously feeling really apprehensive, and my son sitting in the back seat, and he just reaches up straight away, no hesitation. And I remember just holding him and thinking, man, I've got an opportunity here to right the wrong. And because we'd both been on these journeys and felt that God was pulling us back together, we spent more and more time together, and within a very short amount of time we had fully reconciled and we got married. Went on to have another 2 children, and yeah, we're looking at celebrating our 15-year wedding anniversary this November. God was able to restore this broken relationship that I thought there was no hope for whatsoever. And I would hazard a guess that my partner probably thought there was no hope for it either, but through whatever prompting or whatever decision she made that day was like, I'm going to reach out to Matt. So from the ashes, from the brokenness, God was able to restore, and not just restore for the sake of it, but actually restore something strong, restore something that was going to give back, restore something that was going to be a testament to His power, to His miraculous power, to His heart to see restoration.